Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars.
This is the latest disclosure, a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
Wait a minute, something's happening. Some shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror.
Welcome to After Hours AM Deeper Cuts.
Cutting deep into what skews.
And good evening, one and all, AM, PM, doesn't matter where you are. The only thing that matters right now is it's After Hours AM Deeper Cuts. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, as always, is Mr. Greg Bakken, and we are here tonight with a great show on tap, as always, but actually at the bottom of the hour, you're going to want to tune in for someone new that maybe you've never even heard of, that is extremely skilled, and might I say, in all facets of the metaphysical. Not just one, not just two, but all of them, it seems. And that is, of course, the Mystic John Culbertson. We've had him on the show a few years ago, so any of you faithful out there, you're going, oh, yeah, I already know John. Yeah, we had him. But there's a whole new audience, especially over here, iHeartRadio, and over there at the UK, that may not have... Greg? I need a new tongue.
Take two.
Yeah, I need a new tongue that might not have ever heard of John. So it'd be really, really fun. So actually, I'm really interested in talking with him about numerology, which I find extremely interesting, as well as tarot cards. He's also a very skilled tarot card reader, as well as psychic. All those things, Greg. It's nuts.
No, it's going to be great because there's going to be a lot of things to talk about. Clearly, we're not going to get to nearly a quarter of what John does, and just get his insight on all of this stuff, because to me personally, it's very fascinating, and it's. I think that I'm actually hoping to learn quite a bit tonight.
Yeah, I think we both will, because like I said, it's been a long time since he's been on the air. I think it's already been like 3 years is the last time we had him on, and in radio speak, that's forever. And so we'll get him back on with us. And, of course, brand new show, brand new listeners. So it's going to be a wonderful experience for everybody. But, Greg, you know, as always, I don't say this enough. Got to give you some love, guys. Got to give Greg some love. He's always the guy that's bringing me these cool headlines and bringing you guys, me, and everyone else. So I really want to give Greg all the gratitude in the world of digging up the headlines each and every week that make this first half hour so much fun, and everyone loves it, Greg, by the way.
Well, you know, the thing is that we, at After Hours AM Deeper Cuts, we strive to have a sort of a very strong idea of dare I say it again, strong journalism, and this is what I am going to bring here in this first half hour is some very hard-hitting headlines that will make you think. Okay, Joel?
I'm ready. I'm ready to think.
All right.
I have my thinking cap on.
Good. So here's the first hard-hitting headline. That is very fascinating. I was abducted by reptile aliens who raped me on the moon every night.
Every night? Wow.
That's the first one right there.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Niara Tarella Isley, a former radar tracking officer for the U.S. Air Force, recalled the bizarre and shocking incidents under hypnosis. A former U.S. Air Force worker has claimed she was abducted by reptile aliens, as we know, I prefer to call them reptoids.
Yes.
Who who raped her on the moon countless times. Now, if you tuned into our Paracon radio show, you will know that we've already have established fact that the moon is held for retirement ceremonies for government officials.
Yes, they're currently based on Mars, right? And they go to the moon to do their big, basically the big send-off.
Exactly. So this is kind of a bit of a shock. I'm not going to lie. While there, she said she was made to have sex with aliens and lift boxes.
Lift boxes. You're going to have sex, and then you're going to lift boxes because we want things cleaned up afterwards.
Well, I'm not sure how you can have sex with lift boxes, but maybe they'll talk about that here.
No, that's interesting.
Miss Isley told how she worked at the Tonopah Test Range in Nevada, but said she could recall very little detail about her time there. She claimed security guards raped her in front of an audience after this raping was done before a live studio audience. After she was jabbed in the neck with a mystery drug while in an underground lair. Okay.
Was there a laugh track though during the studio audience? You know, kind of like when you watch shows that they say this has been filmed in front of a live studio audience. Is there a laugh track? You know what I'm talking about.
Well, maybe not a laugh track. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe she has the tapes, but this is where it gets weird. Okay, now we get weird.
We haven't been weird yet.
Then she was raped on the moon, she said. Miss Isley described the bizarre and shocking series of incidents under hypnosis. In taped interviews with Aquarian Radio, she claimed she was taken into space 8 to 10 times over several months when she was 25 years old. She said the aliens put her to work, having her operate electronic machinery to excavate the darkest parts of the moon.
Oh, yeah, the dark side.
It's the dark side. So probably the retirement ceremonies take place on the light side, and then the darker dealings are on the dark side.
Wasn't there an album all about the dark side of the moon?
Was there a what about the dark side of the moon?
There's a whole album by Pink Floyd about the dark side of the moon. And they never mentioned rapings and box lifting.
Well, they might know more than they're letting on. We might need to question them.
We should.
Describing how she was used for sex almost every night she was on the moon, she said she was regularly passed between the reptilians. Reptoids. In addition, she said gray aliens, I don't know why we just have to do colors like that.
So racist.
Were present helping with the work, as well as human personnel who were also forced to help the reptilians do their bidding on the moon.
Ooh,
what is bidding anyway?
Yeah, I always thought it was when you're at the auction and there's going lot number one, no, lot number one, go, yep, 12, got 13, got 13. That's what I thought bidding was. But evidently there's a different definition of bidding on the moon.
After the abduction, she said she couldn't remember much of what happened, including aspects of her work, leading her to think her memory had been wiped. The incident stopped in 1980. She sought hypnosis in an attempt to fill the holes in her memory, and it helped her uncover more details about the abuse she experienced on the moon. Describing her abductor, she said he was humanoid and did have a tail. She said he had yellow eyes and vertical slit pupils. A reptoid. Wow. On the dark side of the moon, she said, there's a lot of sexual abuse out there.
Wow. Man, maybe Bill Cosby's over there, and maybe Bill Cosby's from the moon. And maybe that other guy, what's the one, that Weinstein or Weinberg or whatever, what was his name that just got popped? Harvey. Maybe Harvey's from the moon, and it's perfectly normal where they're from.
Anything's possible.
You just never know.
She also said the excavation work to expand, she did excavation work to expand the military base. It was then that she had to carry out manual labor, including moving boxes. Which I, for one, I'm going to raise my hand. I don't like doing it either.
No, it stinks. Manual labor like that sucks.
Miss Isley, a mom of one who now lives in Colorado, said, at night I wasn't allowed to sleep and was passed around for more sex.
It sounds like she really liked the sex part. She sure mentions it a lot.
That was clearly a biggest part of her moon experience. I was scared. I knew I had to get back to my daughter, so I was pretty compliant. I just didn't want to do anything that would get me killed. Many alien conspiracy theories suggest that the U.S. government is in on abductions, often helping the Greys do the work. Theorists, learning to read on the air, claim that is why officials have not fully investigated claims of their own employees and former staff. Now, do you remember V?
I do. I do remember V. I love that show.
I think that's really what happened. She watched V.
I think that's probably what happened. I'm not curious. I'm kind of curious, rather, what kind of pharmaceutical she may be on.
Well, the rocket ship that took her there is probably rocket ship LSD, so, I don't know. I mean, honestly, who am I to say that something isn't real, but honestly...
But we did learn that already the moon is already occupied by people from Mars doing their retirement ceremonies. How would they have room for all this going on and no one's seeing it from Earth? You would think that, I don't know, maybe with a telescope we'd say, hey, look at those people on there.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of strange things kind of going on here, and a lot of moving parts to this story.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And she doesn't even say whether they're underground, above ground. I mean, how did it really work? And was she able to breathe? And how were all those things brought together to make her basically an alien reptoid sex doll?
Well, you know what? I mean, I was going to say this should be made into a film or something, but like I said, I did watch V growing up.
I did,
and there was
well.
that great cliffhanger of a woman giving birth to a little reptile.
Isn't that where they
pretty
ended
cool.
it? Yeah, isn't that where they ended the series too?
I think one of the miniseries ended that way, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, good old V. I think maybe what she did. Now, I could be completely wrong here, but it involves cheap alcohol and maybe LSD and a DVD season copies of V. Sat down, got a little relaxed, maybe popped the LSD. Next thing you know, she's tripping balls and thinking that she is on the moon when really it's her dog licking her face going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
Yeah. Who knows, right?
Yeah, who knows?
Maybe in all honesty, that's a question for John in our one of our next segments. Like, when do past life regressions,
sure,
and hypnosis and stuff like that? Is there does this sort of thing happen? Because as much as we're ripping this apart, I mean, who knows what's out there?
I'm just saying, there's Swiss cheese. Moon made of cheese. Get it? See what I did there? Holes in her story. I mean, it's huge holes in her story. But hey, you just never know. So maybe this all did happen. Maybe I'm being far too harsh on her. Maybe she really is a victim of our alien overlords.
The reptoids.
Could be. Possible.
So, should we go to our paranormal corner
let's do that.
of After Hours AM Deeper Cuts?
Let's do that.
Nanny spooked by ghosts in selfie at 17th century haunted house while on night out with boyfriend.
Oh, man. It already sounds great.
And this is even the better part about it is that it's no longer showing up on my screen.
Oh,
so that's even better. Here we go. I got it now.
Okay, you got her?
Don't worry, Joel. It's all under control now. The internet has now become my friend again. A children's nanny claims she was spooked by ghosts when she took a selfie in a 17th century manor house. Charlotte Fellows, who's 27 years old, took the snap with her boyfriend during a break at a meal at the Old Hall Hotel in Sandbach, Cheshire. But now she believes the image also captures two ghosts at the manor house, which is allegedly haunted. As she was about to post the photo on social, the image captured a pair of mysterious figures behind her.
Interesting.
Indeed. Now, the 461-year-old former coaching intern and is described by Ghostbusters, which is my favorite term in the world, as you can imagine.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Boy, does that not make my blood boil. Among the most spooked in England and with more than 14 apparitions recorded, but Charlotte from Sandbach did not think she would ever be spooked by an image on her iPhone while she's in the ladies' lavatory area of the half-timbered hotel. She said it was 11 o'clock and freezing cold in the toilet, and I was the only person there. That was a very classy quote, by the way.
That's a very classy quote. I'm in the toity, and I'm going to flash a picture.
I felt the urge to take a picture of myself for no reason at all on the toilet.
I always do. I'm in the toilet.
I had been there before, the toilet,
Yeah,
and it
I
was
hope so.
haunted, but it was something I did not buy into. It was not until the next night I looked at my pictures while I was in bed and was absolutely terrified when I saw the outline of two ghostly figures. It was really freaky. Now, the headline in this, once again, is Nanny spooked by ghosts and selfie at 17th century haunted house while out on a night with boyfriend. The real headline should be, because I've seen the picture now.
I'm looking at it right now.
Nanny spooked by a couple smudges on a mirror.
That's exactly what it is. If you look at this mirror now, let's break this down as paranormal investigators. Greg, I'm looking at this photo and I see, well, an old mirror, number one. I also see dust and maybe some smudges going on, but I'm not seeing any clear outline of any kind of human shape, ghostly activity behind her whatsoever, or in the mirror, which, of course, if it were to show up in the mirror, that would be spectromancy. So no
exactly. Do you also notice up in the, if you're looking at the picture, to the upper right hand corner is HR Puffin stuff.
It is. It's nice to know. It's nice to know he's still around, and he's doing all right. He's showing up, still showing up to photobomb people.
Well, I'll be honest. We don't know if he's doing all right. Maybe this is his call for help right now.
Maybe there really is. It's his desperate call, so he had to choose this chick in the toilet to help him.
He needs help to get out of the demon lair that he's
doesn't contact somebody like last week's guest, like Tim Shaw or anybody. He goes ahead and he contacts her. And not to say he shouldn't, but I'm just saying it's highly suspicious. You're in a toilet. There's a lot of factors that go into a bathroom, and one of those is high humidity. Mm-hmm. And high humidity, whatever's on a mirror, no matter if you think it's dry or not, any imperfection is going to show up simply because of humidity factor as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I mean, this is still better than the evidence you see on Ghost Adventures. I'm going to be honest, but it's just not real.
Is it as good as Reptoids on Moon Good? No, but it's still a pretty good story.
Right. No, very much so. So, I don't know. It looks like another person just taking a selfie of themselves.
It does to me. I mean, she's a pretty girl. I won't take that away from her. Kind of a cute little thing. She's got the little belly button showing there. She's looking good.
Get a room.
But what I'm saying is, outside the attractive young lady taking a selfie, there's nothing paranormal.
No, there really isn't. As far as I can tell with my naked eye. So we got that. Should we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
Let's go to the science corner of After Hours AM Deeper Cuts for some serious reflection and some stuff that we're going to have to really think about, to be honest.
Sure.
Some light casual reading. 10 things that could destroy life on Earth.
Well, I'm always up for a good top 10 list.
That's right. So, number one, there isn't any order to this, by the way, because really the end result is the same for all of them. We die. That's kind of how this works, right? Pretty much, yeah. So, this kind of story is right up my alley. It's all about death and our imminent demise. So this is perfect for me. And I'll probably paraphrase here a little bit because we don't have all day for this. We have 10 Earth destruction, earth-shattering ways to kill us. So we'll get to it. A giant asteroid impact. Okay,
that would do it. That would
do it. Responding to challenges to the hypothesis that an asteroid impact causes mass extinction on Earth 65 million years ago, a panel of 41 scientists reanalyzed data and provided new evidence, concluding that an impact in Mexico was indeed the cause of mass extinction. The asteroid. That's why Trump wants to build his wall, I'm assuming, just so maybe it doesn't happen again. If it does happen, the blast will stay out of the US.
Maybe he has a bigger and more noble goal with that wall.
It's true.
You just never know.
Sure.
Exactly. You just never know.
So the asteroid was about 10 to 12 kilometers in diameter, which is large, but less than 0.2% the diameter of Earth. It's pretty unremarkable and makes it pretty typical minor asteroid. For comparison, this makes it about the size of the known asteroid Gaspra. Gaspra.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Right? I mean, how many times a day do I bring up Gaspra, right?
All the time. Whenever I talk to you,
Yeah,
heard
right.
about Gaspra?
I mean, I hardly can get a sentence out without talking about Gaspra.
I know. It's like, I know, Greg, it's Gaspra. I get it.
Right.
I get it, but no, totally get it. And I do the same thing. You're like, Joel, shut up about Gaspra.
I know. Maybe you're going to call it After Hours Gaspra. I mean,
I thought about it. I thought that's how impacted we are by this asteroid.
I got it. I'm with you. The thing that makes this asteroid so vicious, apart the fact that just hitting the Earth kills everyone, is that it had so much kinetic energy when it hit the planet. The great trick here is realizing that the asteroid gets pulled in by the sun, and that by the law of conservation of energy. NASA detects and tracks asteroids passing close to Earth using both ground and space-based telescopes. It seems like every couple of years, Joel, it feels like that there is like always like a near miss, doesn't it?
Yeah, and what they do is they send up some oil rig guys, preferably Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, James Buscemi, Steve Buscemi rather, and they'll send them up there and they'll deflect it just like in the movie Armageddon. What's the problem here? I'm not seeing the problem.
Nope, they'll take care of that. Now, number 2, this one I don't think is too much of an issue. Watch me be wrong. The Earth could pass too close to a wandering black hole.
You know, now we have discussed this at length on the Thursday show. We had a guy on that talked all about black holes. And what's even more interesting about black holes is they can actually form really anywhere. They don't know why or how they form, so...
Like a tornado.
Yeah, by that theory, they can just show up, and they do move. They do wander a bit like a tornado. So, I mean, we could find ourselves in a black hole, but chances of that are pretty slim.
Well, that's good, because apparently our galaxy is full of black holes.
It is, and white holes. There's also white
holes. Yeah.
Yep, white holes, black holes, all sorts of holes running around out there in the galaxy.
And on Earth, a bunch of never mind. I'm not going to say it. That's a different type. That's a different type of hole.
Yes.
So a new study suggests, however, that black holes are the door to other parts of the universe. So you can go in and maybe you'll never come back out.
Well,
Anyone who managed to get through one of the mysterious doors would end up spaghettified and stretched out like long strand of pasta, according to research. Instant weight loss. They'd get squished back down to size once they reached the other side, but it's unlikely they'll be alive to see it.
I was going to say, that'd be kind of like one of those things that, I don't know, that kill you.
Right. Now, number 3 is global warming, which we all know is fake, right? I mean, we all know that's not real. Let's not say that
too loud there, Greg. There is some evidence to support that there is global warming. So let's not. Now, man's role in it is still up for debate among some people. But yes, global warming is real. But some would say it's fake. Donald Trump would tell us that there's absolutely nothing to worry about Donald Trump. And he believes that we shouldn't worry about Donald Trump. So we shouldn't worry about global warming.
Exactly. So we can just cross that off the list.
Never going to happen.
So just in case people don't pick up on sarcasm, I do believe in global warming. Okay, let's just get that figured out right now.
Yeah.
Number 4, magnetic reversal. Sometimes I'm up at night just terrified of magnetic reversal.
You
know what I mean?
About
I just can't sleep at night.
Yeah, you just dream about it. You wake up going, "Oh, it's a reversal, magnetism. Oh my God."
It's. I mean, how many times are you like? Magnetic reversal. Every few 100,000 years, the planet's magnetic field dwindles away, then over the next century reappears with north and south poles flipping.
Sure.
We know of about 170 pole reversals. Don't give me this material. Yeah. Over the last 100 million years. The last was 781,000 years ago, which makes the next one well overdue. Of course it is. Just like the supervolcano. Yeah. It's all overdue, right?
Exactly. Well, the upside is Minnesota, where you and I are broadcasting, would all of a sudden become tropical overnight.
Right. Right.
So what's the downside? We get pair of suntans.
Now we move on to number 5, which is gamma ray bursts, which is another thing that keeps me up at night.
Yep. And that it creates incredible hulks, gamma rays. So
yeah, it does. It does. Flashes of gamma ray lights are thought to be caused by merging of two collapsed stars. They are the most powerful explosions in the universe, with up to 10 quadrillion times the energy of our sun. So a little bit more.
A little bit more. Not a ton more, but enough to make it a little warm.
Current estimates are that a gamma ray burst will happen in our galaxy or in a nearby galaxy about once every 5 million years. Let me guess, it's well overdue.
It's well overdue. Man, we're behind the 8 ball in all this stuff. Let me tell you. You know,
we're just holding on by a string. Just remember
Exactly. That's it. It's just borrowed time, my friend.
It always is. Number 6, devastating solar storm. Now this one I could see happening. Sun constantly sneezing powerful solar eruptions onto Earth, increasing the risk of cancer and causing power cuts.
Oh, not good. Especially the power cuts. I mean, the cancer, but hey, the power cuts, none of us can live without internet.
That's right. Massive eruptions could bring about the destruction of electronic devices and increased cancer risk for aeroplane. I like aeroplane passengers. What are we in the 1910s?
I like that. 10s? And then we have wing walkers now.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the aeroplane flying over the South Pacific, just one nasty storm could plunge entire cities into darkness by knocking out power grids and bringing down communication networks such as our network, our own network.
Yeah, exactly. We would no longer be on the air. We couldn't help anybody. We could not give them their fill of news headlines if that happens. So
can imagine the outrage.
Oh my God, there would be some strongly worded letters. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be exactly what happened. Some scientists have suggested that solar flares caused Mars' atmosphere to be worn down, leaving it the arid red planet that we know today.
Wow.
We're going to leave you with this question, Joel. Could Earth end up looking like the barren red planet in the future?
You just never know if something like that happens, possibly. I mean, we don't know, but I mean, I think we're going to be gone before any of this happens. So, but
and the reason why we're going to be gone is because of number 7, nuclear war.
I think that's more on the horizon than anything else in this list.
Next week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some fear nuclear war, and I keep wanting to say nuclear, but I'm not George W. Bush, is more likely to happen now than at any other point in history since the end of the Cold War. Atomic tensions are running extremely high since North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un claimed he has the ability to hit New York with nuclear weapons. I just did it, nuclear weapons. Now, I didn't. This is what it's written on this highly scientific journal. The tubby tyrant has spent years publishing propaganda which shows bombs dropping on the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, man. Not good at all.
Now, I'm just going to go through this last couple because we're running out of time here.
And by the way, our guest, hey, John, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. We're finishing up news here. We're going to take a little bit of a break here in a couple minutes. And, we want to get your take as long as you're here. We're doing headlines of what might happen to the Earth. And if you'd like to weigh in at all, feel free, my friend. And you are a regular to the show, by the way. All of our new listeners may not know who this guy is, but he's actually a good friend of mine, and it's John Culbertson. And I've had the pleasure to get to know him over the years, and he'll blow your doors off. Let me tell you, if you don't want yourself, he'll blow your doors off. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. So go ahead, Greg.
What's going on?
I know.
So just real fast, a couple last things about was the super volcano the one in Yellowstone, which is overdue to erupt.
They're
apparently
always overdue. Those super volcanoes. They're everywhere, but they're always overdue.
Pandemic. That's one too. That our food line is kind of basically kind of on a string. I don't think we have more than a month or so before after food runs out that there's any sort of food distribution system in place. If we have some kind of major crisis on hand, it's not good.
No, it's not. But number 10. Well, I got to go to number 10 here.
Good, because that's the next one.
Artificial intelligence, Skynet comes online, and we're running for Terminators. That's it. That's how it all ends, man. That's how the curtain comes down on all of us.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And the thing is like, artificial intelligence, honestly, I'm just looking for intelligence, from people. So, I mean, if it's artificial, I'll take it, right?
Exactly. So anyhow, those are the 10 ways that we could check out as our Earth. And you know what? Let's hopefully we avoid all those things.
Real fast, though, Joel, what if all of them happen at the same time?
I don't think we'd really know all of them happen at the same time. It would be a matter of, which one killed us. It wouldn't matter because we'd be dead anyway, right? So
that's right.
That'd be pretty bad. We come back, we have my good friend and someone that hasn't been on the show for a long time, Reverend John Culbertson. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
About Bubby the Clown. Bubby wasn't like other clowns. He was evil, cruel, and disgusting. He was demonic-like. He was also a cannibal. Bubby would look funny and cute, like most clowns that come to children's birthday parties or at the circus. That's so he could get his prey. Eventually he would turn on you, turning into a monster that's unstoppable. His teeth would grow long, sharp, and pointy, with gums torn and black. His fingers turned into claws, all bloody and crooked, and broken-looking, but can still slash you. His clothes become torn and old and dusty, like they were locked into an attic for years. He keeps a wide, bloody smile, and his eyes turn black. His makeup becomes smeared, and you can see wounds and open sores on his face. He was uncomfortable to look at. He would cause many cases of missing people and murders, but yet no one knows that it's a demonic cannibal clown causing all this. Everything that he caused is a mystery. The people that survive and escape his attacks often suffer being traumatized and depressed, along with many wounds. Some people even have to go to mental hospitals. Some people lose arms and legs or get deformed faces from Bubby's attacks. But mostly, Bubby loves to kill. Bubby would claw at your skin, leaving deep scratches. He would bite off your flesh, taking off the muscle where you can see the bone. He'll crush your bones, tear apart your insides. He likes to eat your face first. The tongue and eyes are his favorites. Soon he starts tearing apart your torso, eating away your stomach, intestines, heart, and lungs. Bubby doesn't usually talk, but when he does, his voice is deep and warped. You can't normally understand what he's saying, but what you can hear is some language that's very inhuman, like hell's language. And it's nothing like, I am 666 or something like that. Really, no one can make up what Bubby says. Bubby is full with evil. Bubby is something no one wants to encounter. Bubby usually lives in deep woods, sometimes hunting on animals, or resting, waiting for time to prey upon more humans. Bubby is very tall, too, about 6 feet tall. Some people report seeing a very disturbing clown walking around town. Some of you may have read or watched Stephen King's It, but this clown isn't like Pennywise. Bubby is more horrific than Pennywise. Please, watch out. Don't trust clowns, because maybe that clown that you meet may act all funny and sweet, but he's probably Bubby, waiting to get his chance to feed off you. And who knows? Maybe Bubby is watching me record this. Maybe Bubby is watching you watch me. Maybe it's Bubby that's recording this. So, are you afraid of clowns?
Welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, as always, is Mr. Greg Bakken. And tonight we have Reverend John Culbertson on. I'm still trying to figure out that handle, John, because I've always called you Mystic John Culbertson. That's a new one. Now, John, as I said before we went to break, you've been on the show a few different times. It's been a long time. It's been way too long, my friend.
That's been a while, yeah.
And it's been a long time, and I've always referred to you as the Swiss Army knife of the metaphysical, because you'll do astrology, you do tarot card reading, you do numerology, you do it all. So I know, Greg, you have a ton of questions for John. So I'm going to step back a little bit, and I'm going to just let you ask the questions, some of the questions, because, you know, like I said, we've interviewed him extensively in the past, and this is your first time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You know, the thing is, John, and it's very nice to meet you finally. I've heard a lot of great things about you. All the stuff I'm looking through, everything, like not even everything. Like we're talking about that some of the stuff that you are great at with the metaphysical world, ESP, dreams, mysticism, world. I mean, a ton of stuff. The one thing that has always I've never really understood very well, and I'd like to understand a little bit more, is numerology.
Okay.
Because I don't know anything about it. I mean, I hear about it. I hear it being very successful with people, but I don't understand it. I'd love to be able to understand it. I'm hoping there's a couple people out there who are in the same boat as I am, because it's something that I was very interested in.
Right. Well, and the great thing about numerology, Greg, is that I tell a lot of my students that if you want a place to start in metaphysics, numerology is the absolute perfect place to start. And the reason why it's so perfect is because almost everything else in the metaphysical field will bleed into numerology at some point in time.
Sure.
Take the tarot, for example. Once you understand numerology, you know about 56 of the tarot cards.
Okay.
That quickly. Okay?
Sure.
Wow.
Once you understand numerology, you have a symbol system for helping to interpret dreams. Once you understand numerology, you begin to understand some of the aspects that occur within astrology. So numerology is incredibly important to the overall field of metaphysics. And I didn't
Is it one
know
of the
this when I
cornerstones? I'm
What
sorry.
was
Is
that?
it one
I'm
of the corners? Is it one of the cornerstones? Would you go as far as that?
I would say that, yeah. I
Okay.
absolutely think it's that important. Now, a person can study tarot, astrology, dream interpretation, channeling, mediumship. They can study all that without a background in numerology, and they'll do just fine. But numerology just gives you kind of that extra oomph, that extra symbol system to use to kind of heighten each of those other fields, each of those other things that you can, you know, really tap into and look at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And there's a lot of different types of numerology. I certainly don't know everything there is to know about numerology. It's kind of a disclaimer here. Okay, but from what I have studied in numerology, I can only tell you that it has been incredibly helpful to me in every other discipline within metaphysics. So, you know, and of course when I say metaphysics, I'm referring to the paranormal, supernatural,
Sure.
all that kind of stuff, you know, we kind of talk about when we talk about metaphysics this day and age.
Does numerology, in a sense, can that help confirm things that you do in other areas? Because you mentioned how you can use that to help you with tarot card reading or anything, or and dreams and other things. Can you use that in a sense of like tarot card reading, that
Sure.
what you get from there you can almost confirm through numerology?
Sure, absolutely, and that's the perfect way to look at it, Greg. Perfect. So let's say I'm reading someone. Let's say I'm doing a session for someone. Okay. And let's say I have either astrology, numerology, or tarot available to me. Okay. Mm-hmm. One of those systems is going to give me a great deal of information about the person. If I have two systems, I now know more. And if I bring in three systems and tie them all together, well, that kind of paints an entire picture. And so in that way, the systems do bounce off each other. They help both to confirm each other, and they also help to point out differences that may be worth discussing with a person and talking over with a person.
Sure. So when you get into helping somebody, how do you know what piece that you want to use to be able to read them or help them? Like, how do you know, like, I need to do something like tarot or numerology or, you know, astrology? I mean, I'm assuming that it's very obvious, but to myself, it's like, it's almost like a number of pieces of an arsenal, if you will, that's like, what do I do to be able to help this person best?
Right, and that's a wonderful question, Greg. And the truth is I can't answer that because I myself don't know until I'm usually sitting down with someone.
Gotcha.
It's not like there's this process I go through. It's almost like one of my spiritual helpers, guides, whatever you want to call them. It's almost like they say, we'll do numerology for this person. Or, we'll start with astrology here.
Yeah.
Or, just flip a tarot card. Forget about all that. Just listen to what I'm telling you.
Yep.
You know, it really works that way when I sit down to work with someone. I don't know what I'm going to be doing until I actually start working with them.
You know,
that makes a lot of sense.
That does make a lot of sense because everyone's an individual. So, I mean, you know, if everything worked for everybody all at the same time, it would be a no-brainer. Okay, we're going to start here, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But,
and guys, that's the beauty of knowing multiple systems, is if you do start with a system and it's not connecting with that person, abandon ship, move on to the next one. Use something that is going to connect with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
What do you find connects the most with the average individual? Is it mediumship? Is it numerology? Or is it tarot? Well, what would you say is kind of your go-to?
My go-to has always been tarot.
Interesting. Yeah, because it's an interesting thing, tarot. It really is. And we'll get into that later because I know there's a lot of folks that listen to this show that are fascinated by how tarot works.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's always been my go-to. My average sessions will involve tarot with a lot of channeling usually. And sometimes I'll actually read the cards, and sometimes I just flip them to be flipping them, and I'll just kind of repeat what I'm hearing as far as for my spiritual helpers and so forth. You know, the other thing that I use a lot when I meet... Let me put it this way. Tarot is my go-to most of the time, but when I'm working with a new client, I always start with numerology.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Always with a new client.
And why is that?
The reason why I do that is because it just gives me kind of a basis to work from. And I'll tell a person I'm working with them, hey, I've never worked with you before. I'm going to start with numerology, and I'll probably never use it again on you. But at least for today, I believe it's going to be beneficial in giving us kind of a starting point and helping us to flesh out what we need to focus on, what we need to work through, what we need to pay attention to, etc.
Sure. So it kind of gives you a kind of like a triage of that person right there and then. Mm-hmm. And so you can better
like
help
a baseline,
them.
Exactly.
Yeah, better help them.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, numerology, Greg brought it up, and you and I, we've discussed it before on the show. But there are things that people could do, like today, if they wanted to, in numerology. I mean, you taught me a couple quick things, birth dates and things like that. And I know our listeners are going like, well, tell us now. Tell us something quick that we could do ourselves. Right.
So this is another beauty of numerology. It's so easy. I can teach people the basics of numerology in one night in about an hour, hour and a half. And they have that then to use for the rest of their life. Okay? One of the fastest things you can do is just take a look at your day of birth. Mm-hmm. Okay? If you're born on the 17th, for example, like I am, you can take a look at that day of birth, and you can add the numbers together until you get down to a single digit. So if you're born on the 17th, 7 plus 1 is 8. So we're looking at 8 and not 1 and 7, but the 1 plus 7, which is 8. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yep.
Okay? And that's going to give you kind of an idea of what the person's talents, abilities, skills are, what they were kind of born in this world to work with. Okay? And let's just play with you, Greg. Can I get your day of birth real quick?
Sure, January 22nd.
Okay, 22nd. So in this case, remember when I said you add the two numbers together? For all you people who are listening, well, I lied. You don't do that in this case. When you have an 11 or a 22, you keep the 11 or the 22, okay? Because those are called master numbers.
Okay.
And so the 22 is referred to as the master builder. And so we know that Greg's talents, abilities, and so forth is kind of helping to put the big picture together for people. You know, other people may see kind of bits and pieces of it. Greg's going to end up being able to take all of those bits and pieces and weave them together to help people see the larger picture. Make sense?
You noting that, Joel?
I am right there. You know, it's funny that he said that because, Greg You have already done that in our radio careers, as well as your own personal career. Weave things together. There'll be times, just to validate where, of course, John's coming from, where we'll be sitting here brainstorming about how to approach like a guest, or we have bits and pieces of something and we need to put together. Greg will go, I know how to do this. Sit back, relax, and just let me do my thing. And next thing you know, he shows up with a finished product. I'm like, how the hell did you do that? And there he did it.
It's such a natural talent for Greg.
It really is.
This is one of his many skills, but that's kind of the primary one we look at when we look at the master builder.
Cool.
Now, the other thing about the 22 is it has to revert down to its lower number at some point in time. So 2 plus 2 is what? It's 4, of course. And so the lower vibration of the 22 is 4. And so what that means is that when Greg's not operating from that perspective of pulling everything together, he's operating from a different perspective, and that different perspective being kind of, maybe I shouldn't say it this way, but how do I pull myself together?
Right.
Okay? Yeah. So that's going to be the other focus area.
Yeah. We all have that perspective once in a while.
We all do.
I hear you there.
Right. Okay. So 4 is a wonderful number. Also, it's a foundational number, and so Greg is a foundation person. You need to know what it is to set your foundation, to set up your foundation. You go to Greg and you ask Greg. He'll tell you what it is. And sometimes you may not even know how he knows, but he knows.
Well, and I find that interesting because for anything I do, like if I'm going to get involved with any project or talk to anybody, I need to know what the foundation is also. And if there isn't one there, either I want to try to get one together or I'm not going to be interested because I know it's going to fall apart if there isn't a big plan in place.
Right, and so that sentence right there, I know that it's going to fall apart, there's not a plan in place. This is extremely important for you, Greg, because what this also says is that when you're not involved, things fall apart.
Kind of, yeah.
Sure.
I don't mind saying that, yeah.
Look at you, Greg. You're the master artist over there.
Yeah.
Builder.
Good.
Builder.
Hey, you are the master builder, okay?
Yay, let's talk about Greg more.
Keep it coming, John. Keep it coming.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, but again, that was just an example. You know, each of the numbers have a specific meaning. And the way I teach numerology, I teach what's called the keyword method because it's the fastest way for people to learn numerology. And when I'm working with students for the first time, I give each number a single keyword so that they don't have to try to memorize like umpteen million different meanings for each number. Or that they get one keyword for each number and then they can run and play with it.
No, this is really fascinating, actually, and I would assume that the feeling I'm feeling right now is very similar to a lot of your clients who suddenly it's like, without you ever talking to me before, that you are reading my essence in a sense,
right?
You know, like because I'm not like, oh yeah, I like to do that on occasion. No, that is how I work, and I get frustrated very easily when it doesn't work out that way.
Sure.
And it's like I see that and it's like this is really cool to hear that. I really this is very cool.
Well, and that's important also because as my students work for various classes, when we get towards the end and they start to learn to read people, one of the things I constantly remind them of is that your purpose is to help people realize what they already know. Mm-hmm. It's not to reveal something to someone that they don't know, but it's to help that person understand what they already do know so that you can bring them back to balance and get them kind of back to where they're like, yeah, okay, I know who I am. I'm aware of, what I am.
Reaffirming their own... basically their own knowledge, just to let them know, yes, this is who you are, and just reaffirming it that way. Gotcha.
Exactly.
So I don't want... Oh, go ahead, sir.
Well, what I started to say, that's why I tell a lot of people when they're wanting sessions with me, don't come to me if you're looking for the oh, wow, he knew this, and I'm surprised for the fact that because that's not my purpose for what I do. I'm not, I don't consider myself to be an entertainer. I consider myself to be a helper. And my whole focus is on the helping aspect.
Can I tell I want to tell a personal story with you and I after you're done with that statement, by the way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So go ahead, please.
My dad, when we first met, I was in a dark place. Remember that, John? My dad had just died.
I do remember that, Joel, yeah.
I was just a wreck. I really was. I was somehow holding on to my radio job and just going, how am I going to make it through it? I met John, right? And I I am skeptical. Everybody knows this. Heck, we've had some great psychics on, and I've been like, yeah, well, you might be psychic, but you have to prove it to me. And you just, out of nowhere, just like on a side, just channeled my dad like to the T, and you didn't even know the guy or me or anything is going on. And so that floored me, and that really created our friendship because, again, you know, John, we don't see you out there going, I want a TV show, I want a TV show. You've always been there to help people. And that's something I want to make sure that I give you your just due on. You've never been one to be out there in the limelight. You've always kind of worked in the background, which is really refreshing, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, and that's true, but, you know, for someone who, you know, you take a look at the essence of me. I have this strong Scorpio aspectation astrologically and a strong 8 numerologically. This puts me in the background. And what this means is that every time I try to be in the limelight, I will always fall flat on my face. And there's no way around that in this lifetime for me. That's not what I was put in this life for. Yeah. I was put in this life to silently and in the background kind of guide people and help them. Sure. I mean, you know, like my inner 12-year-old's going, now read me, John, do my numerology. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to hear mine. Oh, yeah, well, let's go ahead and grab your day of birth, too. It's been a while since we looked at that.
Yeah, it has been a long time. August 25th, 1974.
All right, so that 25 is a special number. Okay, first of all, we add the 5 and 2 together. That gives us the 7. Okay, but the 25 itself is a karmic debt number. Mm-hmm. And what do we mean by karmic debt? We mean that in this lifetime, there's some aspect of you working to correct or fix something from a previous life. That is, provided you believe in past lives, and some people don't.
Sure.
Okay? The 7 itself is a number that typically focuses on 2 things. Number 1, the 7 is focused on how I can help basically other people, the world, okay, humanity. You call it, sometimes there's a humanitarian aspect that comes along with it. But at the deeper level of that 7, there's an idea of finding out who I really am, too, and discovering kind of what my purpose is. And, you know, it's funny because my protector guide tells me that you've always known your purpose. Yeah. And you've always been working on your purpose. So it's not like, you know, this is like earth-shattering, but this is a reminder that even when you know your purpose, you have to be careful not to question yourself because you may have doubts many times as you work through even your purpose in this lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what I do, and I have helped people to my own detriment sometimes. And that's something to where I need to, I've learned, actually Greg's helped me with that as well. Sometimes I'm just too darn nice.
Because of that 22 vibration there.
Exactly. Right. Sometimes, I'll be honest with everybody that's listening, sometimes I'm just too darn nice to others that don't necessarily have my best interests at heart.
Right.
And keep in mind, too, it's not always about numbers how I help Joel. I sometimes do routine beatings of him,
He does.
Too,
he flogs me. He beats me. Yep. Rubber hose. Yeah. He likes to use the rubber hose, and he just beats the hell out of me once in a while. That's all.
That's how we get stuff done on radio.
No, very, very interesting stuff. And then, of course, that's stuff I already kind of knew in the back of my head. You know, kind of like what you were saying.
Do you want me to go through and run through the numbers real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
That'd be great.
For people who are listening, so they can kind of grab a piece of paper and kind of notate this and have some fun with it.
All right.
Okay. So number 1, we identify with independence. Okay, one key word for number 1, independence. Okay. Number 2, duality.
Okay.
What does that mean? Well, basically, duality is the idea of always having to see more than one side.
Okay.
3, expansion.
All right. I'm writing these
4,
down.
I already mentioned, foundation. 5, change. 6, responsibility. That kind of reminds me, I was teaching this class once, and I was talking about 6 being responsibility, and I had the student get mad at me, and because they had a very strong 6 number, and they're like, well, 6 is not just about responsibility. And I said, well, you're right, it's not just about responsibility.
Now we're on 6. Can I ask a quick question about 5?
Yes. Sure, go for it.
change, is that as in a change agent, like someone who helps facilitate change?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, both. It can represent a change agent. It can also represent someone who's constantly going through changes. It depends upon the person.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, it can be both.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. We're on, I think, 7 now, right?
Yep. 7. Yep.
I usually associate spirituality with 7.
Okay.
Okay. 8 is power. And 9 is endings.
Okay.
Okay. Your special numbers, those master numbers, 11 is messenger, as in giving messages. And 22, of course, we talk about being the master builder.
Right.
Okay. And so something fun that you can do is to take your phone number, add up all the numbers in your phone number until you get down to a single digit, and it'll tell you what you use your phone for.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I wrote all that stuff down.
That's one way people could do it. You can also look at your bank account number. Add up all the numbers in that. It'll tell you how you use your money.
Say what?
You can do your address. It'll tell you what your home is for.
So everything in numerology has a reason.
A lot of little ways you can play with this.
Yeah, so I mean everything has you can quantify it through numerology, it seems. A lot of things at least. You know, how to handle money, like you just mentioned. Your home, what that's for. Interesting.
Yeah, even letters have a numerological representation. Each letter represents a different number.
And now would that be in alphabetical order where it lands in the alphabet?
Yeah. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. That's numbers 1 through 9, and then you start over again.
That's blown me away, Greg. Did you know all? I didn't know any of that.
No, I don't know anything.
That is
and
interesting.
That's the great part. And like you said, and Joel, like you said, John, I mean, it's this part of it, at least, you know, is very simplistic. I mean, in the sense that it's easily accessible to anybody who wants to just have a go and kind of get any idea of what some of these numbers mean for them.
Right. It's a place to play. And, you know, is this always going to be 100% accurate? Of course not. You're working with a single word for each number.
Sure.
You know, I don't expect someone to have the sort of you know, multiple words, multiple knowledge of the numbers that I've acquired over the years, but this gives people a starting point to play around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that is neat because, you know, of course, the listeners now that have written down all these numbers, now they can give somewhat of a baseline to their friends, start practicing a little bit numerology. It's a good...
Grab your friend's day of birth, and that'll tell you something about them.
I think it would be fun if anyone who is open to do so, if they want to add up their birthday and let us know what they are.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Tell us what you are with your birth date, and of course, John has already told us what those numbers are. But if you didn't write those down, you are listening live. You just can't write them down. We'll have the podcast up both on iHeartRadio and, of course, our normal areas that we have podcasts. So download it, listen to it as many times as you need to get those numbers written down and get a better grasp of numerology. Because, you know, it's not hard, but it does take a little bit of brain power there.
Yeah, there's a little effort required. But again, it's something that's easy to learn, and you know, once you start playing with it, you can just kind of take that base foundation, and you can just keep expanding. You know, you can learn that, for example, 1 doesn't mean just independence; it also means leadership. Mm-hmm. But is every person that has a 1 birthday going to be a leader? No, not necessarily. They may be learning how to be a leader, for example.
Sure. So there's a lot of shades of gray though in there as well in development.
Always. Yeah, you have to have an intuitive kind of pull as far as how to apply the information. You know, this is the reason why we play with it, so we can start to embrace our intuition, which then becomes, you know, the major important thing to kind of conducting and living life more fulfilling and in a better manner.
I also wonder, too, I mean, I think this is a good lesson, and correct me if I'm wrong, that how you don't want to be also so rigid in these interpretations, because, like you said, if you're taking just the word from each number and you're just going around the world being, I'm a leader, and maybe you're not, you know, or at least you're not, that's not your soul function, then you got to be aware of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely true. This is for a lot of students, this is a major issue when they first come to a class because they want this rigid, well, it has to be this. And what I try to remind them is that there are no have-tos. Sure. Not in what we're doing.
Sure.
There are certainly guidelines. There's kind of nudges as far as where we can look at things and interpret things.
Sure.
But if you try to do it rigidly, you're going to end up being very disappointed at some point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to run a break, everyone. More John Culbertson would come back. I mean, this is just fascinating stuff. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. You're listening to After Hours AM Deeper Cuts.
Cutting deep into what skews.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If pop culture is to be believed, roughly 40% of all people are actually vampires, or dating one. Well, undead or not, you can always save on a clean, comfortable room at Motel 6, even if you sleep during the day because direct sunlight turns you into a pile of sparkly coffee grounds. Speaking of which, we have free coffee every morning. You day sleepers may want to go for the decaf. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you. Book online at motel6.com.
Hi, I'm Kip Parker. And I'm Charlie Parker. And we're the Parker Brothers. Hey, Charlie, what's missing from our game catalog? I don't know, Kip. Tell me. Well, you can't talk to the dead. You sure as hell can. That's why we got this brand new game called Ouija. Ouija? Well, break that down for me. Well, it's Wii because you're having a great time, and G, it's because G, aren't you having a blast because you're having a good time with the Wii. It looks like it smelled like a Chinaman got caught in there. Don't question it. Well, Ouija, Kip, tell me about it. Well, inside the package comes a flat board with all the letters of the alphabet, numbers from 0 to 9, and a yes-no written out by itself. Well, that sounds like a lot of stuff going on. It's got a lot of stuff going on indeed, Charlie. It also comes with this planchette which hovers over the letters the dead are trying to tell you. Well, how does that work, Chip? Well, you ask the question, and then the dead move your hands in the direction of the answers. That sounds like a heck of a way to find Grandpa's slave money. Turns out it was in the attic. But the questions don't have to be as serious as slavery. You can also find out if Sally's got a crush on you. The dead like to answer all sorts of trivial questions. Feels like they'd have better things to do with their time, Kip. No, lost souls are lost forever, and they're really glad to help. Well, gee, Kip, can't you just get any sort of board with numbers and letters and talk to the dead? The dead prefer quality like anybody else. Quality you can only find at Parker & Parker.
The Ouija board, brought to you by the Parker Brothers, available in both white and colored walworts. Separate but equal savings.
Author Steve Asher brings us Hauntings of Trilogy. Steve's first book, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary. This first installment of the trilogy tells us the tale of the Kentucky State Penitentiary and why it's so haunted. With every turn of the page will be something new and terrifying. Pick up Steve's new book, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary, at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and all better bookstores everywhere.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to Geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
You're dead! I saw you die! I was faking. I used ninja focus to slow my heart rate down. What are you doing? I'm burying you. I'm alive! I'm alive! You're waking the neighbors! No. Shut up! No! Now I'm gonna play your drum set.
Welcome to After Hours AM Deeper Cuts.
Cutting deep into what skews.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody, the Deeper Cuts edition. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Greg Bakken, and we are talking tonight, of course, with Mr. John Culbertson, Reverend John Culbertson. And if you listen to the first half hour, he took us through a really quick numerology tutorial. So if you missed it, go back, listen to it, grab it on podcast, listen to it again. It's something you can grab, something you could try out, something you can learn from a base. But John, you weren't always into this like you are today. And everybody has that backstory. What brought you to the metaphysical points?
Wow. So certainly when I was little, I never thought I was going to be doing this as a living. My interest was in computer programming. I wanted to be a computer programmer. Well, before that, I wanted to be a priest. A lot of people don't know that I was planning to be a Catholic priest, but that's a whole other story. I'll get into that some other day.
Sure.
But, you know, my backstory, basically I grew up a very difficult childhood, very rough childhood. It was during that childhood that I began kind of talking to the angels, working with angels. It's also where I honed my intuition at. I think anyone who comes from a difficult, rough, or abusive background, I think that they're extremely naturally gifted on that intuitive level. They have to be, because they have to be able to tune into other people's emotions, to know what kind of mood they're in, to know, how far on the eggshells they can walk before, things get out of hand. And so, I kind of grew up in that background, and then I left for college. And in college, I had some experiences. I wrote about that in one of my books, Miracle of the Angels. But I had some experiences in college, and eventually I just decided to give in, and I actually went and started working with several different people. I've learned from a lot of people over the years. I think the first person I started working with was, what was his name? Craig Parker. That was his name, from the United Kingdom. At the time, he wasn't that well known, and I don't even know if he is still well known in the United Kingdom. It's been so long since I've looked into him, but he was running some online classes back then on dream interpretation. And that's where I really started, was with his dream interpretation classes and working for them. And from there I branched out to studying remote viewing at the Academy of Remote Viewing. I did stuff with spiritual counseling. And this journey eventually took me to the Astrological Institute of Integrated Studies down in southeast Florida. And down there I kind of had my in-depth training in astrology, numerology, tarot, channeling, mediumship, psychic development, feng shui, I Ching, you name it. It kind of, I had a well-rounded background in all that stuff. I got the chance to work with Sandy Anastasi and John Mares, which some people may have heard of. Sandy was mentioned in John Edwards' book, Crossing Over. And her and him were really good friends. I got the opportunity to meet him a couple of times. So it's just really kind of bled off from there. At that point, when I finished there, I kind of, started working in this field, and I've never left since then. And I still learn to this day. I just recently finished a class on shamanism that I had been taking for almost a year and a half. So again, this is something that once you start getting into it, you never really stop learning. You're constantly learning. And what I try to remind all people, particularly students, is take it slow. People want to rush, and they want to get so much information, and I hate to tell people this, but you're never going to learn everything. It is not possible.
So, there's so many competencies that you have acquired over the years. Is it a matter of that it's relatively easy to build one after the other because there's some very similarities between all of it, or is it a lot of starting fresh in these different areas?
There is certainly a lot of overlapping that occurs. There's a whole lot of overlapping that occurs, but the difficulty is not everyone is aware of the overlaps. And so a lot of times, for example, if you don't have someone who's aware of how, for example, numerology and tarot overlaps, you learn numerology and then it's like learning tarot from starting from the beginning, because there's not that awareness that, numerology is woven right into tarot. And likewise, astrology is woven right into tarot. Tarot is woven into astrology. But if you don't know that and you go to study one of those systems, and a person who's teaching it isn't aware of the overlaps, they don't teach it from the perspective of the overlaps, so you really only get that single system.
Gotcha. So it's really a larger picture. It's a chain. It's links in the chain. So
yeah, is it like connecting dots in some areas?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
That's how I see it.
The best example I can give you is, numerology. We just got them talking about how the number one represents independence. Well, forget that for a moment and think of the number one as representing new beginnings.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, in the tarot, you have 4 aces, and in playing cards, you have 4 aces, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those aces then represent new beginnings. What type of new beginning depends upon the suit. For example, wands is a physical new beginning.
Okay.
Cups is an emotional new beginning. Pentacles, a financial new beginning. Swords, a mental new beginning. Okay? But all of them still represent new beginnings. Why? Because they come from that one foundation in numerology.
Sure. You know, a little bit about myself. Now, I don't even know if you know this, Greg. I read tarot. I do a little bit. I do. I have a deck, and I read it once in a while, and I'll do it for my friends or the wife or whoever. They'll say, hey, give me a daily reading. And now that you say that, I never put that together. I always kind of viewed it as, well, it's a deck of cards, and, you get what you get, and that's exactly what you get. But now you're saying it's linked, and that makes completely more sense to me. Doing tarot here and there, just more or less as a parlor game, I guess, of people that kind of, tongue-in-cheek, give me a reading. But really, it's much deeper than that. The tarot deck is way deeper than what I was given credit for.
Yeah, it absolutely can be.
And, during the break, though, we'd mentioned dreams. People, me, everybody is either terrified of dreams, they are infatuated with their dreams, or they're just damn near confused about their dreams. What is it with dreams, and how can we decipher a little bit about our dreams?
Okay, so you have to understand, first of all, dreams is one of my favorite topics in metaphysics. Okay, I get really excited when I talk about dreams, so if it sounds like I'm bouncing off walls here in a few minutes, forgive me ahead of time. Okay, I get really excited about dreams. In fact, when I'm teaching psychic development, in the first or second class, we start the process of covering dreams, and we continue for about 3 months looking at dreams, in addition to the other work that we do in psychic development classes. Okay? And there's a reason why. There's a reason why dreams are so dear to me and so important to me. It's because, understand, first of all, that there are 4 possible ways of looking at dreams. And all 4 of them are right at some point in time. Okay? The first type of dream that we have is called a letting go dream. Okay? And those dreams are the dreams that you have as kind of a culmination of events from the day, the week, the month, and it seems like you're replaying and rehashing events. And really the whole purpose of that dream is just to get it out of your mind, because it's serving you no purpose, it's serving you no good. And we can't really interpret those dreams.
Is it a bit like a
They're more about just letting go and just kind of healing in some way, if you will.
It's like a mental purge, then, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Getting it out of the system.
Exactly.
Okay,
so that's the first type of dream we can have. The second type of dream that we can have is what's referred to as an astral dream. Okay? And, of course, when we talk about the astral plane, we're talking about the non-physical world. And in the astral dream, a couple of things stand out. Number one, they're very lifelike. They're very real. It's like you're actually there. It's like you're smelling and you're sensing and you're tasting and you're experiencing. And it's like everything seems real. And these are the dreams that people have when they have what are referred to as visitations. When someone who is deceased comes and they're talking to them and they're kind of experiencing things with them. But that's not the only time we have those dreams. We also have those dreams when we're kind of exploring, too, on that astral level.
Sure.
Okay? And again, they're marked by how vivid they are and how clear they are.
Are you saying that we leave our just so I can understand it better, because astral dreams have always been something that I've pondered and wondered about. Is that like we're shedding our physical self and we're with our higher self?
It's the idea of the soul stepping outside of the body.
Okay, it makes perfect sense. My father, for instance, he comes speak to me always in dreams. It's always vivid, like, really vivid. And that happens occasionally. And it freaked me out the first couple times, but then I kind of got used to that. But you almost, for me anyway, and I can only speak for me, I almost feel like I have a hangover afterwards when I wake up, though, if I have one of those dreams.
Yeah, and a lot of people will feel that way. They'll feel like they haven't slept at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, to kind of to take us a little bit off course, which I think I'm going to a little bit, because the astral dreams are very interesting to me for the same reason that Joel just brought up about visitations and whatnot. Is there any possible way of knowing when you have a visitation versus your brain kind of organizing what's going on, what happened with that deceased person coming to the dreams? You know what I mean? Where sometimes it's your brain reacting to the situation opposed to actually being maybe a visitation, but obviously I'm hoping it's a visitation.
Right, and so I usually tell people to err on the side that it probably is a visitation. Mm-hmm. That's the side that I tell people to err on. Are there any kind of concrete ways to know for sure? Other than what I've kind of described already, that those visitations are going to have that vividness to it, and they're going to have that very realistic quality to it. That's what separates those from those letting go dreams. The letting go dreams are a bunch of images that you see, but it's different. And the only way I can describe it is it's kind of like when in the letting go dreams, it's like you're watching stuff. Mm-hmm. But in the astral dreams, it's like you're actually there.
All I can say about that is fantastic then. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
And so those are our first two types of dreams. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We also have what are called precognitive dreams. And, of course, if people who are aware of precognition, of course, is knowing before the fact. And these are the dreams that we have that tell us what's going to happen in the future. And I encourage all my students to keep a dream journal because precognitive dreams usually develop a timeline for people. And so, for example, my wife, if she has a precognitive dream, we can be sure that it's going to happen in about 3 days. For myself, I know I'm a couple of 2 to 3 years away before they take place usually.
Okay. Now, is that where deja vu comes from? Where someone goes, I've been
different.
here before.
It's a little bit different. At least that's been my experience.
Sure.
Okay. Precognitive dreams, there's really kind of no way to separate it out because they're not quite like astral dreams, and they're not the letting go dreams. They're kind of just like it's almost like you're viewing things from that letting go perspective. Only it's more of a coherent story. It's more of instead of being these random images, it's almost like you're watching a movie play out, if you will.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had. I don't know if I've ever had one of those myself. Yeah.
Well, and you wouldn't unless you kept the dream journal.
Got it. Because you need to go back to
and look at and read, and it will tell you eventually. Oh yeah, I dreamt about I'm trying to think of an example that I had, and nothing's coming to me right in this moment, and I guess it's not supposed to, but I'm going to make something up here. Let's suppose a person dreams about, for example, their car breaking down.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they write it down in their dream journal, and they date their dream journal. Mm-hmm. And it may be, 3 to 4 months later before their car actually breaks down. And then they go back and look at their dream journal. Oh, my gosh, I dreamt about this 3 or 4 months ago. Well, isn't that interesting? Now, the next time they have a dream that they think they might be precognitive, they know it's probably going to be at least 3 to 4 months before it happens.
Okay, I get where you're going. The
problem with precognitive dreams is that for some people, like myself, it takes 2 to 3 years before the dreams begin to take place, before they begin to develop.
And I'm not a skeptic, but I do have to ask, when you're talking about, say, like you have a dream about a car breaking down and like 2 years later it happens. I mean, that's nothing necessarily overly remarkable, right? I mean, is there do you know of any examples where someone had something very specific that just is like, you're not going to really dream about that, or it's really out of the ordinary, but yet they dreamt about it?
Yes. And I will see if I can find my dream journal. If I can, I will try to photocopy the page and mail it to you. But about a year and a half, I think it was, before the Twin Towers kind of had their major event, I had a dream about 2 towers collapsing and falling. And I was standing down around the rubble looking at everything in that dream. And I was saying, oh my gosh, isn't this horrible?
Yeah.
And I woke up and I wrote it down in my dream journal. And I said, I don't know what, and at the time, of course, I knew a lot of people in the field, and so I was talking to people, well, do you have any idea what this might mean? Because normally we don't look at precognitive dreams as precognitive initially. We usually almost always start from an interpretation point of view, which is the fourth type of dream, which I'm going to get to in a few seconds. But I was going to people, do you know what this might mean? Do you know what this, well, maybe it's like the Tower card. Maybe something in your life is going to fall apart or change. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that could be. But and so I just kind of put it away. And then the day after the Twin Tower episode took place, I was going back for my dream journal, and I came across that dream, and I was looking at it like, oh my gosh, I wonder. Now, to this day, do I still know that that's what that dream was referring to? Of course not. I cannot be 100% sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's no way I can be 100% sure that that's what that dream was referring to. But I do know it's also coincidental.
Yeah, it
two
is.
towers crumbling. And then a year and a half later, for that to take place, for that event to take place.
But when you realize that, you must have just felt like, wow. I mean, this is nuts. How that moment, because it's such a big moment in history. And then
it was more like I'm looking at it saying to myself, is that what that really was? It was more of me questioning myself, which I think is the norm for anyone to do when they're dealing in this realm. I tell my students, it's not uncommon to question yourself. It's not uncommon to have doubts about what you're seeing or what you're getting.
Sure.
Everyone thinks that you're so confident, you're so certain. No, that's not even close to being true. It's not that simple. Mm-hmm. There's always a hint of doubt in there. There's always that kind of wondering, well, is that possible? Is that true? Even when you're working one-on-one with a person, these thoughts go through your head as you're working with them.
No, you almost have to have that, though. I would think you have to have that. Just that checks and balances. You have to be your best skeptic.
This is so important. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But you have to be your own skeptic, man. I mean, that's what I've told people in paranormal.
And it's so important because I tell people when I'm teaching classes that this is not a fluff class. I'm not here to make it all roses and fluffy and things like that. You have to be well grounded in reality in order to take these classes. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not, you're going to get the wrong idea very quickly, and that defeats the purpose at that point.
Because ego steps in at that point, doesn't it? I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, so I think we're missing out on one dream so far?
Yes.
Okay.
And those are the interpretive dreams.
Got it.
Which is the most common kind. Dream interpretations, that's where we get dream interpretation from, is with the interpretive dreams. And so the interpretive dreams are incredibly important because if you're planning to do mediumship, that is talking to people who've kind of crossed over, if you're planning to do that for people, or if you're planning to be a psychic reader, you will have to learn to work with symbols at some point in time. Mm-hmm. Because that's by far the easiest way for the other side to communicate to us, is with symbols. Okay. And so you get your base symbol system, your very beginning symbol system, by doing dream interpretation. And it's through that process of dream interpretation that you start to learn what each symbol means for you. For example, if I have a dream about water, I know an emotional time period's coming up. Likewise, if I'm working with a client and I see water, I can almost be positive that they tend to react very emotionally to situations in their life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that symbol system becomes important.
Yeah. Can I share a dream that had a symbol in it that I've never forgotten? This was probably about 10 years ago. I've had this dream where I was walking around northeast Minneapolis, which is an older part of the city, and I'm walking on the sidewalk, and I walk underneath this tree, and there's this snake that just looks at me, like this large snake looks at me and just opens its mouth and, like a snake would, and tongue comes out, whatever. After I cross past the snake and the tree, it's winter. It's snow everywhere. Snow is everywhere. I mean, that's the dream. There's nothing more. But
that's a good dream.
Yeah, that's a good dream. Then.
It's stuck with me for
I don't blame
forever.
Ya.
I mean,
it's
I always think about it. That was about 10 years ago. Yep.
Okay. And how long have you been involved in metaphysics or the studying of the paranormal?
I've probably been about 5 years.
Okay. So let me explain this dream to you real quick.
Please do.
Well, by the way, for those of you who are listening, anytime you have a dream, the very first sentence is incredibly important that the person tells you, because that's going to tell you who the dream is about or what the dream is about. And in this case, Greg started with, I was walking. Okay, so this dream is about Greg. And not only is it about Greg, but it's about his journey through life. I was walking, okay, and you came across this tree. And people who have not studied Kabbalah would not understand that this tree is a representation of the tree of life. It's a representation of the many different pathways that are available to you to go. It's available, the many different knowledges that are available to you. And on this tree was a snake. And the snake opened its mouth. And I remember that. Well, the snake is a representation of the Kundalini energy. Okay, and that Kundalini energy deals with the opening or the awakening of the chakras in a human body, and it deals with the opening of their spiritual self. And it deals with, and in this case we're combining the two symbols together, and so there's an idea that in winter, okay, which is symbolism for later in life, not right then, but later, you're going to find yourself really opening up and kind of developing on this sort of level, and you're going to find yourself dealing with, the spirit realm, but not just the spirit realm, all aspects of knowledge that's associated with what I term metaphysics. Other people have other terms for it. But you're going to begin to accumulate, and you're going to begin to take all this knowledge and kind of weave it together. And because of your 22 birthday, you're going to use that to help other people build things or to see the bigger picture in life, most likely.
That's pretty exciting. And I have a lot of friends who believe that have told me many times that psychically I'm very strong.
Yes, this dream would kind of confirm that, would kind of indicate that.
It does, and I mean, even though I believe him and I can feel my own what I've been doing is getting stronger and stronger. This, you telling me this felt like that was a big door opener for me, actually.
Good. Now, this is a perfect time to bring up another point, which is, nightmares.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why do some people have nightmares? And what is the meaning behind nightmares? And what I tell people, first of all, to understand is that if you have a nightmare, it does not mean that something bad is going to happen.
Okay.
Quite to the contrary, our guides give us nightmares so that we remember our dream and so that we don't forget it. That's how important it is. They have to do something to jolt us so that we jolt awake and so that we remember it. And that's the reason why nightmares occur. Or anytime we have a symbolism in the dream that might be kind of frightening or something to that effect, the reason why it's there is so that our higher self, our spiritual guides, some people call it the God Force energy. We could go through a million different names here.
Sure.
But the powers to be essentially are saying, you will not forget this, and I'm going to make sure you don't forget it.
Yeah, that makes sense, because, I more vividly remember a nightmare than I do a nice dream, where I was walking through a sunny field. I remember being scared, having the crap scared out of me in a dream.
Right.
Before I remember the sunny field. So that makes complete sense. Yeah, I've had weird dreams, like Greg, just strange. I'm a little more, since I've known you and we've talked about dreams and interpretations, I'm a little ahead of the game only because of that. And I've interpreted dreams as I go. And mainly what happens to me, for my dreams anyway, is if I'm meeting someone new or getting into business with someone new, it's like I dream about that. I don't know why.
Sure.
And it just kind of reaffirms or shows me who that person may really be. Yeah,
right.
It's like your own mind has to process that.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's another way that dreams can work. The beauty of dreams is that it's just like working with numerology, astrology, and things. Every person is an individual. So, I remind people all the time that it's your responsibility to figure out what dreams mean to you. Now, you could ask people, what do you think this means? And what are your ideas on this?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's going to be your interpretation of your own dream that's going to be the most important.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right, because it's our dream. Yeah, that makes complete sense. We got to get out of here. We have to go to break. I'm not going to blow past break this time, Greg. Let me tell you. We're going to hit on the mark, gosh darn it. We'll be back with more John Culbertson. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. We'll be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
I got a rather serious problem over here.
All right, what are we looking at?
Cranky mother-in-law asleep on the couch in the man cave.
Dear God.
It gets worse.
That's impossible.
She's passed out on the remote.
I stand corrected.
What do I do?
Okay, I want you to grab a Torrent Big Red hydraulic bottle jack.
Okay.
Now you wedge that bad boy in under your mother-in-law and crank her up skyward.
It's working. And got the remote.
Great. Now grab that Torrent Big Red 2-ton folding shop crane and put that woman on wheels.
And away we go.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. And welcome back to After Hours AM Deeper Cuts Edition. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Greg Bakken. And tonight we are talking to Mr. John Culbertson. A lot of misters in that sentence. I know, guys. And we are, actually, we just got done. If you missed it now, we also did dream interpretation. And a lot of people are just coming on board right now going, what did I miss? What did I miss? Guys, you missed a whole lot, so you're going to want to go ahead, download the MP3 when we're done. Of course, we're going to have it up at iHeartRadio, everywhere else that we put our MP3s at, so you're going to want to do it because, quite honestly, John came in and gave us a great tutorial at the top of the show about numerology, which I thought was fascinating. And then we moved on dream interpretation, where he interpreted your own dream, Greg, which really was really cool to do that and hear and really learn how the symbolism works in a dream. But now let's move into, if we can, reincarnation. That is something that is such a polarizing subject matter, John. People either believe it or they don't, and they're both equally passionate on both sides. What's your take on it?
They're both right.
Wow. Well, hey, show's over, guys. Answer that question. No, what do you mean by that?
In metaphysics, we have a concept where we say that our perception creates our reality.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we think, whatever we believe, whatever we feel is constantly creating. So if a person does not believe in reincarnation for themselves, they have created a world where there is no reincarnation. They will pass on, and they will not come back.
Okay, now does that mean darkness for them, or do they go to heaven, or what?
No, not necessarily. If they believe in a heaven, for example, then most likely they will go to a heaven, or, heaven forbid, to a hell, depending upon what their belief system is, and depending upon how they feel at the time of their death. But
that's incredible.
Our beliefs tend to create everything for us. And there's going to be some ethical kind of dilemmas that are immediately going to pop up in people's heads, and I would prefer not to address those currently because it's so important to get this concept in the mind that we create our own reality. Consistently and constantly by what we believe. For people who believe in reincarnation, the probability is they're going to come back.
Okay.
It's interesting because I've always thought that, in my own personal belief, that you create your own hell. That's the one thing I've always kind of thought. I mean, I've never really thought about it quite the way that you had mentioned it, and it makes a lot of sense. But it's always, for me, the whole idea of like, if you believe that you do bad things and you're going to go to hell, that means you are going to go to hell because you created that. And I always thought that was interesting as far as, because I know you do stuff with the paranormal also, as do I, as do Joel. How many times I've run across spirits who needed help crossing over or were afraid to cross over because they felt like that they were going to be judged and that they're going to go to hell.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's a perfect example. Perfect example.
So what you're saying, basically boil it down as the old saying is perception is reality.
Perception is reality. Our beliefs create essentially reality for us. Now, of course, when you have two competing belief systems, what's going to happen is one reality is eventually going to win out. So, for example, all three of us here right now, if we all three have a different belief about, I don't know, can I reach for a phone and slap John or whatever? Okay. Well, those three competing beliefs will fight with each other, and one of those beliefs will eventually win out. The more dominant belief will win out, and that person will be pulled into that belief system, basically.
Is that, John, why when people have near-death experiences, some talk about heaven and a tunnel, and others talk about hell? Because that was their preconceived notion when they passed away?
It may have been their preconceived notion. It may have been the preconceived notions of the people around them at the time. Remember, our belief systems are going to be in competing reality.
True.
And so, I'm going to talk about a very touchy subject real quick, but I'm going to use this to illustrate my example here. Okay? Let's talk about health, and let's talk about things like cancer.
Okay.
And let's talk about why some people recover from it and why some people don't.
Okay.
Okay? If, for the prevailing kind of society around us, a doctor tells you that, you only got 3 months left to live, 90% of the people are going to believe that doctor. And they're going to immediately then have ingrained in their mind this idea that, oh my gosh, I'm dying in about 3 months.
Yeah.
And in that moment, they've sealed their own fate. They have created that reality, they have aligned with that reality, and they have stepped into that reality at that point in time.
You're right.
Okay?
You're right, because...
Whereas someone who may hear that say, well, no, one, I'm going to get a second opinion, and two, I'm going to fight this with every ounce of being that I have. Now, is that a guarantee that they're going to live forever? Of course not. Nobody can live forever. But is there a chance that by doing that, they're going to prolong their life longer than otherwise? Of course.
Yeah.
Because they're putting out a different energy at that point in time, and they're having a different belief system. In metaphysics, we talk about this law, and it's called the law of averages. And what the law of averages states is that basically you either create your own reality or you live in the life that other people create for you.
You know what? I've heard that before, and I believe that you have to create your own. You have to buck the system, if you will, and live the life on your own terms.
Right.
And so that's powerful right there.
And so, circling back around to reincarnation, I believe that at the end of the day, because I'm operating from this kind of dualistic kind of mind frame, that both people are right with their beliefs. You can't call a belief wrong.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
For that person, it's right.
But
I choose to have a different belief, and for me, I believe in reincarnation.
Do you think it's possible? I mean, because I've always had a theory, too, because I always wanted to figure out how I could... How you could have your spirits that you're speaking to in paranormal investigations or just spiritually, and then the idea of reincarnation, and what the way you explained it obviously makes a ton of sense, and I really subscribe to that now that I'm hearing that. But do you think that is there any possible way that you think that people when they pass that they might split? And that part of them, like there's part of them that goes on, their essence of them goes on to be the spirit that how they were, that moves on to whatever the next adventure is. But then there's part of them that becomes reincarnated.
So this is exciting because this is actually an advanced class that we're dealing with right now. When I teach classes, this is kind of like at the 6th, 7th month mark where we start to get into this kind of stuff. So this is exciting. So I'm going to, first of all, tell you to think of something that I teach in the very first class when I'm teaching psychic development. And one of the very first things that my psychic development students learn is that time and space do not actually exist. Okay? Once you understand that time and space do not actually exist, it's entirely possible for a spirit to be here as well as in the 1800s and also in 3333. All is different energy.
Wow. Okay.
None of this is new to me. I'm going to be very honest and say that all this stuff, even though I've never talked to anyone about this is all stuff that I've always felt. Do you know what ever use the program Photoshop at all, John?
Yeah.
And
Not very
the
well,
reason
but
why I
yes.
say that, I always think of our existence as like the layers in a Photoshop file,
Good.
where you have many layers coexisting at the same time, but
Perfect.
You may only be aware of your one layer.
Perfect. That's a perfect example, and I may steal that in the future.
Please
because that
do.
is a wonderful example.
Yeah, no, because I've done EVP work where there's entities that not only will they tell me about their existence during the Revolutionary War, but they'll also turn around and tell you what's coming in the future. Yeah, I mean, like if they've lived in both, or at least they're really good at tricking me, at least, and making me believe that they're all knowing. But that does lend now, of course, that ability to, because after all, like we've already established, our perception's reality. We operate on our frequencies. Time and space don't really exist. I mean, other than our own, again, perception is reality moment.
Exactly.
And so, so that would make our energy a free-flowing entity that really the laws of time cannot affect.
Right. So what I like to tell people, and what's kind of exciting is, let's say that I'm coexisting right now in 3 different ages. Let's say I'm existing in the, medieval times, and I'm existing here right now with you guys. And I'm also existing in some future world where we're living on Mars. We'll use that as an example.
Okay.
And let's suppose that all 3 of us are having the same problem. We're all 3 just absolutely horrible at public speaking. This is only an example. We're all 3 horrible at public speaking. All 3 of us are terrified to speak to people. And let's suppose the me in medieval times is having to give a speech to the king's court, and the me here is getting ready to get on stage to give a speech to, about 1,000 people on meditation. And let's suppose the me in the Mars colony is about to give a speech on how we must bind together, come together in order to survive. Well, the beautiful thing is only one of those 3 personalities have to be successful, and all 3 of them will be.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, now is that where dimensions come in, John?
Yes, we're playing with dimensions right now, correct.
And is that what makes, because you're in one space, one time, is that what makes past life regression possible?
It's a big part of why it's possible, yes.
Okay.
So you're channeling the other individual in the other dimension when you're past life regression, unless I'm completely wrong there.
No, that would be true to a certain extent, yes.
Okay. Because I found that fascinating how you can go into hypnosis and I've seen video, I've read books on it, how people go into hypnosis and they'll talk about living, for instance, during the time of Jesus or the time of the Roman Empire. And just give great, vast details, things that they never could have known, but later on are uncovered that they were completely right.
Right.
And so that gives that validation of that, wow, maybe that person actually did live during that time. How else would they have known that? I mean, and it was in some obscure manuscript that isn't uncovered until someone checks the right cave and gets some of the Lost Testament or something.
Right.
That is that's mind blowing,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's really mind blowing, right, Greg? I mean, my God.
Well, it is, and do you run across a lot of people who may not believe in this sort of thing, and then when you explain it, like how we just talked about it, you get them to be like, "Oh, okay, I get this now," and like it changes their viewpoint on it.
It will. And of course, there's always going to be some people that want to hold a different viewpoint, and I embrace those individuals.
Right.
I think that people who don't believe in, for example, reincarnations, or who don't believe in, quote-unquote psychic abilities, people who don't believe that there's anything to this, I think those people are incredibly important to our world also.
Again, the
because
checks and balances.
They help ground it. They help keep it stabilized.
Well, I remember one of our old conversations years ago. It's something you said. It's always comes back around to also checks and balances. You need the two to exist.
Right.
In order for it to exist at all, you need the two halves. And so that makes a lot of sense. Now mediumship, you do a lot of mediumship, and you and I, we've talked about it a lot, and maybe in the future, in a future episode of this show, you'll be doing that as well. But how do we, now Greg, I do have to test, Greg is a very powerful medium, or at least psychic, or ability-wise. Let's call it ability. How do we hone that for ourselves, though? How do we get on that road to be able to, I guess for lack of a better term, talk to dead people?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go back to our dream interpretation, because that's really where you need to start at. And some people will disagree with me on this, and that's okay. They're allowed to. But for me, you really need to have a foundation in dream interpretation before you start trying to communicate with people who've crossed over. Mm-hmm. Since the primary way they're going to be communicating is through charades or through a symbol system, it helps to have a starting symbol system that they can use to kind of give you images, to give you things that you can interpret.
Got it.
You know, when I do mediumship, and I've never classified myself as a medium, and people keep telling me, "Oh, you're a medium, you're a medium." They keep pushing me into that kind of category.
Yeah.
I have a mental block where I just don't associate myself as being a medium, and I'll explain that someday. But right now, what I'm trying to say is that when I'm sitting there and I'm going to be doing mediumship, it may sound like it all flows very naturally to me. You know, I'll be talking about certain things and so forth. Well, they have to understand that there are still nothing but symbols going through my mind, and I'm interpreting each of those symbols. It's not like I'm being specifically told, oh, this person was this way, and they looked like this, and they did this, or that I'm even seeing the spirit. I'm getting nothing but symbols on my end when I do something like that.
Okay.
And so I've learned over years that certain symbols mean certain things, and so I don't bother to tell the person, oh, I'm seeing, you know, for example, water, so I know that, you know, this person was an emotional person. I'll just say this is a very emotional person. And I'll kind of flow through it that way because, again, this is just how I've learned to do it. It's how I've learned to associate it. I think a lot of people want to jump into doing mediumship before they have a foundation in other things. And that, I think, is very dangerous. I think people need to develop a foundation, whether it be in psychic development, whether it be in tarot, but they need to develop some other foundation that they can pull from before they just jump into trying to communicate with people who've kind of crossed over. We will always have what are called natural mediums, and those are people that it just comes naturally to. And to those individuals, they don't need that kind of foundation. But most of us are not natural mediums. Most of us are going to need some sort of foundation to work from and to keep us grounded when we're going into that altered state of consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So it's kind of like you need to have simple arithmetic before you go into algebra, basically.
Right. It's like I say, you got to learn to crawl before you can walk, and you got to know how to walk before you can run.
Yeah.
Now, do you find that people that, you know, I would imagine you come into contact with people that want to throw caution to the wind and start mediumship right away without the foundation. And what is it disastrous, or do they struggle, or does it just become an internal struggle with them?
For some people, it's a struggle. Some people will open themselves up to things like possession and attachments and things like that. It depends. It depends. Some people they find that they're actually very good at it, and it's not a big deal. But it's that idea that you just don't know what's going to happen that bothers me when I'm working with students.
Sure.
And so I won't let someone take mediumship from me until they've covered the basics of psychic development and until they've been working with psychic development and practicing psychic development.
There's a lot of prerequisites, is what you're saying, before we get to that point.
Right. There's a lot of things you need to know. There's a lot of practice that one needs. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before you just jump in to do that. And that's just for their own safety.
And
as well as the safety of the clients that you're going to be working with.
Sure. And the one thing that I always am afraid of, being a part of the paranormal community, and you meet a lot of people, right? You meet a lot of people who throw out the term that they're mediums or they have these abilities or whatnot. How do you know? I mean, what are good ideas to know that maybe you're not dealing with the right people, or that they might even be fake?
Okay. Well, that's a hard question because I don't like calling people out on being fake and stuff like that, but I'll try my best to answer that. So for me, I just have this kind of innate knowing that this person isn't really gelling with me. I'm not really feeling that what they're telling me is right for me. And usually if I get that feeling, I'll just kind of step back and say, well, I understand that they think they're doing a world of good, at least most of them, but it's not right for me. It's not good for me. Okay? You know, I tell people you have to listen to yourself. You know, you have to listen to what you're feeling. If you sit down with someone and they're going to be doing mediumship for you, and you're 15, 20 minutes into the session and they're still not connecting with anyone, you probably need to call it a day and walk away from it.
Yeah.
Okay? For myself, if I don't feel like I'm connecting with someone in the first 5 minutes, I tell them this isn't working. It's not you. It could be me. I don't know. But for whatever reason, it's just not working for us. You need to see someone else, or you need to come back to me some other day.
Yeah.
Okay? That's how fast it should happen. Within the first 5 minutes, there should be some sort of connection. And something to be able to say, oh, okay, well, I know this person, and I realize who this person is, and this very much sounds like the person that I knew and that I remember, essentially.
And I would assume, like, leading questions or a lot of questions, is that also a warning sign, do you think?
Well, this is a bit tricky because there's a time and place for questions. You know, we have... I tell people, for example, in my tarot classes, we do what's called psychological tarot. And with the psychological method of reading tarot cards, you're asking a lot of questions in order to pull information out of a person, in order to get a person to acknowledge something, realize something, and embrace it. Okay? You can do the same thing in mediumship.
Yeah.
But, however, okay, if you're going to be asking a question... You should make, in mediumship I'm referring to here, if you're going to be asking a question, you should have kind of an awareness of why the question is being asked. For example, I may say to someone, you know, was your father involved in ministry? And the only reason why I'm asking that is because I'm seeing a cross by him. Okay? I'm asking a question, but I'm providing the reason why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, it's not like cold reading, you know what I mean, where they'll... is there a J out there? Someone, oh, yeah, does anyone have a loved one that passed away that has a J in their name to a gallery? Oh, I do. He says hello. Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I get exactly where you're going with that, John. I do. And you know, like for me, just really quickly, when I read tarot, sometimes, for whatever reason, I'm in the zone. I call it the zone. I'll flip the card, and I'll tell them what I think that card means, not what it says in the book it means.
Right.
And of course, I'm like, whoa, I shouldn't have said that. That's not what it says in the book, but that came to me really strongly. This is what this means for you.
Right.
Is that normal?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, good. I was going to make sure I wasn't going insane there for a minute.
No, you're not.
Okay.
It's okay. You know, anyone who learns to read tarot, they will develop a strong ability to channel at some point in time. It happens naturally.
Interesting. That is interesting. You know, because I picked it up in college for fun. Tarot. You know, because we were in college. I'm like, I knew a guy that did tarot, and I'm like, how does this work? He says, well, you flip the cards, you flip to this book right here, and you tell them what it means.
Right.
I said, oh, okay, but what if I'm feeling a different meaning for that card for them? Like, let's just say the Six of Cups comes aboard, and it's upside down, which some interpreters will mean that money's leaving because it's emptying the cups. Some people, you know, my teacher told me that it matters whether it's up, whether it's down, things like that. But to me, I might flip that over, or if I get the Knight of Swords, I'll be like, uh-oh. But look, I'll say you have conflict. This is why I feel is you have conflict on the way. It's not here yet, but it's coming. That Knight of Swords is a harbinger of conflict. Look at him; he's ready to battle. You know, things like that. So. Anyhow, getting back to what you were saying, sorry about that. I didn't mean to segue into all that kind of stuff. No, it's
good. And, you know, just to kind of add to that real quick before we get back, you know, I tell a lot of people when I'm working with them, teaching them tarot, that you're going to get my meaning for the cards, but at some point in time, you have to develop your own meanings. You have to get your own system, because as you read the tarot teaches you how to read it.
Yeah.
And so you start with, again, just like numerology, you start with a baseline. But at some point in time, that baseline is going to change, and you're going to have your own interpretation, your own understanding that you're going to be drawing from.
Yeah, I believe that, because I've learned that as well. My own interpretations on things.
Do you mind if I go back to something from the last segment that's kind of stuck with me?
Sure.
First of all, I do feel like I just have to say, when I was in college, I dated a girl named Tarot, but that's another story altogether. But you mentioned that you at a young age talked with angels, communicated with angels, and I'm just curious, how did that just happen, and what was your reaction to that when that came about?
So, when I was growing up, I was in a very unsafe environment. Mm. And I was emotionally hurt quite a bit in my young life. And a lot of times I would hibernate in my room. I would go to my room. I would close the door and lock the door, and that would be my safe zone, my safe place. Because I knew that as long as I was in my room that I was okay. And one day while doing that, I was crying, and I essentially had two angels that appeared. And they began chatting with me, talking to me. And after that, every time I found myself in my room in a, messy state, there they were to comfort me, to talk me through things, to work with me. And that's how I developed my relationship with the spirit world, really, was through those angels.
That's amazing.
That is amazing, and I hope, Joel, sometime we can do a full show about angels, because I find them so incredibly fascinating.
I would love that, and you're talking to the right guy. John is actually very knowledgeable in angels as well.
I believe it. And do you think, John, that they come to us even, I think they come to us when we don't see them like you're seeing them, but they're going to be there, and it's up to us to decide whether or not we acknowledge them, or that we are able to see them either metaphysically or real.
Right. Well, and that's definitely part of the equation is being able to acknowledge, being willing to acknowledge. Mm-hmm. I when I'm teaching about angels, one of the first things I teach people is that angels tend to be bound by a divine rule that says that they cannot interfere with people's lives unless a person asks them to. Yeah. And so, in this state where I'm crying, I'm saying, someone please help me. God, are you there? Angels, anyone, help me. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, I gave the permission.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you still see them now?
It's from time to time, yes.
Is it the same angels?
My life is much more put together at this point in time, but yes, there are times, and I see other people's angels once in a while too.
Okay. And it's always the same? I mean, it's the same angels or different angels or?
Different ones.
Okay.
Different ones.
Matt, yeah, like you said, though, we could do a whole show just on angels, because I have a ton of questions. I've also heard that angels don't necessarily have gender, male or female or anything like that. So that's another thing. And John, do they have gender? Do angels have male, female, that kind of stuff going on? And do they have wings?
My experience has been is that they will present themselves to me in a gender form.
Okay.
But I do not believe that they themselves have a gender.
That makes sense.
So, for example, they may show themselves to me as male or as a female energy.
Okay.
But I think that they're choosing to show themselves to me in that way. Sure. Not that they necessarily are that way.
Sure.
We're born male, female.
Yeah.
That's debatable in our society these days.
Well,
but
a little bit.
And to Joel's question about the wings, you got to wonder, do they appear with wings because that way we would immediately recognize them as angels, because wings was an added feature to them from some century, some time ago. They weren't always depicted with wings.
When the first time that I worked with angels, I did not see wings around them.
Okay.
They were more like people.
Well, I hate to break this up, but we're down to less than a minute. John, tell everyone where they can go to learn more about you.
Sure. My website is mysticjohnculbertson.com. You can search the web for Reverend John Colbertson or Mystic John Culbertson, and I'll usually come up within the first 1 to 5 on Google. That's probably the easiest way to find out more about me and get to know me.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone check it out, and don't worry, we will be having John back on, where he's not going to be a stranger anymore. We're going to have him more, because people are always saying, when's he come back on? I miss so much. Don't worry, John will be back on the show, but until then, take care of each other, love each other, and hey, you know what? Perception's reality. Just remember that.